Hey there, welcome to NCAA Week 8, but we're going to start off with the Week 7 recap. I'm John.
I'm Bobby.
And I'm Josh.
And we're glad to bring you some of this college football. And what we're going to do is we're going to count down sort of the bigger games from 10 to 1, in our opinion, of course. But we're going to look at those. There were some upsets, but some that were closer than we thought that they should have been or would have been. And we're going to start off with Texas at Oklahoma. Oklahoma wins this, not surprisingly, but maybe surprisingly, the score, 31-26. What do we got here?
I think this could have been because of the battle they had against TCU the week before.
Oklahoma.
They probably had some Oklahoma. They probably had some tired players. They're probably disappointed they lost.
I know that.
I don't think you can. I don't think it's that Texas is good or they're getting better. I think they still have a lot of work to do. I think it was just more of a lack of Oklahoma.
I think it's a rivalry game and anything can happen in those scenarios. So I think Texas was going to be ready to play. I mean, as bad as Texas is this year, if they were to knock off Oklahoma,
it would have been huge.
Yeah, it would have been huge for momentum against morale. So,
yeah. All right, number 9 was North Carolina, the Tar Heels. They were at Notre Dame, and they lost to Notre Dame. Again, not a surprise, but the surprise was 50-43.
Sure.
Good
wow.
grief.
Is this basketball?
That was
kind of like
that was the defensive battle, wasn't it?
I mean, I think this goes because Notre Dame kept getting a pretty good lead,
sure.
And then they would just let UNC come back and let UNC come back. At some point, you have to start wondering what is up with Notre Dame's defense.
Do you think their mind wasn't there?
I think they could have been looking ahead to Florida State. I mean, but who knows? Maybe they weren't. Maybe they just struggled.
Yeah, maybe so. All right, another struggling one was Bama. They were at Arkansas, so another home game where they struggled. Fortunately for them, this time they pulled it off, but barely. 14-13. The only thing that saved them was a blocked extra point.
I'm having a theory.
Let's hear this theory.
Why?
I need a theory. I need
why
something.
A lot of teams are struggling.
Okay.
I think it's because if you have a game against Ole Miss, your next week game you're gonna be exhausted. Ole Miss hits you and hits you hard. And I think when you play, they're really physical. I'm not saying Alabama obviously has a ton of things they need to work on, but after you play Ole Miss,
I agree. I think that defense is very good. Ole Miss definitely will get you messed up for the next week. But that game was just hard to watch. I mean, it was about as bad to watch as the Tennessee-Florida the week before. It was just nobody could score, fourth down.
Alabama couldn't move the ball, and then I mean, shame on Arkansas. I mean, they were making all these third down and long conversions, and they still can't pull out a win. They're
still 0-2 in conference. They didn't win a conference game last year, so
and they're 0-15 in SEC games.
Wow.
So they're hurting, and it's not going to help them this coming week. I'm just going to say that to start off with. Okay, number 7, we had Oregon at UCLA. And again, not a big surprise that Oregon won, and they won pretty big. Matter of fact, the score doesn't even show how big they won because it was 42-30, and UCLA scored 20 points in the fourth quarter.
Sure. So maybe Oregon took the brakes off. UCLA is just really just surprising. I thought this was going to be a really good game. I mean, this could still be the potential Pac-12 title game.
I bet to differ on that one, but you can see.
But I've lost all faith in UCLA so far. So.
I have too. I don't see them as any kind of.
Well, we were already saying Oregon's probably not going to lose 2 games in a row.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, we were thinking that UCLA was stronger than this. They showed that they really are not. Okay, then the number 6 is USC at Arizona, and so we were thinking Arizona coming into this thing undefeated that they might be able to pull this thing off, but they didn't.
Worked their way up to the 10th in the nation, and
it was close.
Poor kid missing that kick. They call the timeout. I still don't necessarily agree with that. Call the timeout and he makes it. They call the timeout and he misses.
Yeah.
Part of me just thinks for Arizona, part of being a top 10 team is being able to handle the pressure. And I think they were good enough to beat USC. I think they are a good enough team to beat USC. I just think the pressure and not being in that situation experience really hurt them.
Well, granted, they're still in the Pac-12.
It was a tough loss at home. And once again, the Pac-12 is still wide open.
Sure.
Every team in the Pac-12 has at least one loss, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
A conference loss.
That's right. And that definitely cemented that with Arizona losing it. So, all right, the number 5 game, we had Duke at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was undefeated coming into this. Duke with only 1 loss. And hey, this was I guess it was an upset, right?
Sure.
I think it would be considered one.
Georgia Tech was undefeated.
That's right. Duke went
was
31-25.
Coastal Conference sleeper
Sure.
in the beginning of the season. I said maybe they could do a repeat.
Well, mind you, that Duke only has one conference loss
Right.
to Miami the week before, so Duke's not out of it. And this was a really big game for Duke, in my opinion, to show they're actually going to challenge for the Coastal. Because after that Miami game, I was kind of, I don't know if they got a shot. But I think after this game, it's over.
Do you know
And
who's
you
the
said-
leader inside the
Coastal
Conference right now?
I would
The only
say,
team
The
that
only
doesn't
team
have a
that
loss,
doesn't have a
right?
loss.
Have a conference loss.
I could tell
It's
you.
Virginia.
Virginia.
They are 2-0.
I'm buying in on Virginia. Their defense has looked stout. I mean, they went toe to toe with UCLA and played another tough team, and I think they're pretty decent this year. They're going to be tough to beat.
Okay, let's talk about really decent this year. You know, I know that they lost to South Carolina early on.
Is that their
I
only
bet you
loss?
anything that they wish they could have that game back. But Georgia was at Missouri, and this was like the SEC East game.
Sure.
And who's going to be dominant? Well, my word.
I think this was kind of Georgia saying we're not out of the playoffs.
34
for
to
sure.
nothing. It was an absolute demolishing. Todd who? Gurley wasn't there, and it was not. And then the young freshman Chubb.
Sure.
He comes in there and gets almost 150 yards and a touchdown. I mean,
Sometimes teams actually, when their star player goes down, they actually gel better together. They just find a way to have resolve and come together. And I think that was the case with Georgia.
And I mean, obviously, they're not going to have a lack of talent at running back just because
Sure.
Todd Gurley's out.
That's right.
And Missouri just wasn't up to that. I mean, it's either Georgia's getting better and better and better, which is possible as the season's going on, but Missouri just definitely didn't have what it takes to be anything.
No. And then as far as another SEC game, number 3, Ole Miss, who happened to be number 3 that week, at Texas A&M, and they took care of business.
Was this surprising?
I don't
know.
I'm not that surprised. I was expecting Ole Miss to win this one.
Yeah, I think I was too. I think we saw the holes. If you have a good defense, then you can keep Texas A&M in check.
Yeah.
Texas A&M already was showing holes.
Yes.
And Kenny Hill, obviously, I don't think he's in the Heisman race anymore. After
Probably
that.
not.
It's pretty.
What was it? 3
There's
interceptions.
almost, I think, 3 interceptions. That's a pretty bad performance, especially in a tough game.
How about Mr. Consistency, Bo Wallace? Are we starting to? Should we give enough respect?
Is it not
to
a bad Bo? I don't know.
Consider the Heisman. Should he be considered
Wow.
into this race?
I mean,
know that
besides
sounds
the Boise
ridiculous.
State game,
That sounds
where
ridiculous.
he four interceptions,
Sure.
he's basically just been improving
Sure.
every single game since. And that was the season opener. And a lot of times you struggle.
And maybe if he continues to do that through the rest of the season, maybe he will be a legitimate Heisman candidate. We'll see.
Which Heisman candidate, we'll speak of that at number 1. We'll see.
All right.
Number 1 game.
Okay. All right. So our number 2 game of the week was TCU at Baylor, and this was another defensive struggle, right?
Sure.
Low scoring, barely 61 to 58. Oh, what was it? Baylor had how many yards?
But
Almost
remember,
700
Baylor never had the
offensive yards.
defense, and TCU never had the
Okay,
defense.
but weren't we just saying that what TCU was known for this season so far was their defense?
Baylor's
thought so.
offense with Bryce Petty, he's a Heisman contender. He's probably on my number 2 or number 1 for Heisman. Dude, every year,
Okay, 6,
throws
7
the ball
touchdowns.
like a bazillion
But
yards.
Baylor did the same thing. I mean, it came down to a field goal, a 4th down, and so I'll give Bryce Petty all the credit, but TCU did almost the exact same thing.
No, they did.
But TCU, I would say they would have won that game if they hadn't played Oklahoma before. I would say they're obviously when you're playing a really tough game beforehand, and
You
Baylor
think they
wasn't,
wore down at the end? Because I mean, hey, what was it? Baylor put up 24 points in how many minutes? I mean,
it's
just
crazy.
Sure.
a ridiculously short amount of time.
Minutes or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Makes you just wonder.
Yeah, maybe that worked. Maybe they had completely run out of steam after playing Oklahoma last week. Maybe so. All right, that brings us to our number 1 game, and this is another SEC game. Number 2 Auburn at Mississippi State,
Who was number
with the cowbells ringing away. Yeah, and Mississippi State was number 3, tied number 3 with Ole Miss that week. 38-23, Mississippi State pulls that thing off.
We actually chose Mississippi State to win this, but I didn't think they'd do it in such a dominating fashion.
You thought
Well, they
it'd be a little
came
closer.
swinging out of the gates, and I think that's what really. I mean, I think they scored 21 points just right out of the gate, and that's
Right.
I think really what set the tone for the game. And Auburn playing catch up is.
So does that move Mississippi State to number 1?
It did move Mississippi State
Okay.
number 1, which, I mean, maybe this coming week Florida State can prove something, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe so.
I mean, Mississippi State played 3 ranked teams in a row and won every time, and
I wanted Ole Miss to be number 2 above Florida State. And even Baylor to be above.
Hey, but they're just rankings. They were, week in, week out. The question is, what are they going to do?
Even Marshall
the next week. All right, so that's it for our top 10 for the week. But we do need to give a little credit to Troy University. They won their first game of the season, their homecoming game. So congratulations, Troy.
Good job, Troy.
So we'll get back with you with our week 9 preview.